Thank you also for the opportunity to explain this project here. I am the leading researcher of OpinionNet, which is a project that studies, sorry, no, it's not. No me cuentes, el tiempo.
No. The time is freezing.
Time to... ¿Me das un poquito de agua? Un poquito de agua. Vale, perfecto, perfecto.
Well, we can speak about the weather. Summer is coming. I think. Yeah, we've got it.
Vale, muy bien, gracias. ¿Los de abajo no? Ah, los he tocado. Ah, perfecto, vale. Well, I continue. I am the leading researcher of OpinionNet, which is a project that studies the digital media effects on public opinion, and that falls also within the group GADE. The news media environment has changed dramatically in the last 2 decades. Before, we used to get our news, or morning news, from newspapers, from printed media, and our evening news from a very limited set of TV channels. Now, our only contact with news events that we didn't have a direct experience with was through the media. The media had a powerful role shaping our visions of the world. Since news content was widely shared across media outlets, it also guaranteed that we had quite a homogeneous vision of the political and social world. With digital technologies, this highly centralized and highly mediated model has been disrupted. Basically because the digital media have multiplied the number of available outlets to an unprecedented levels, and also because they have opened a venue for citizen participation in news production, consumption, and distribution. So today, for example, we as citizens, we are active news consumers. We can actually select, filter, personalize information to select the information we are interested in. We also are active at making news visible, more or less visible, by sharing them with others. Finally, we can also be news producers. It's easy if we have experience with a news event, we have a direct experience with news event, to upload that information to the web. So this more decentralized and flexible environment makes it easier for people to be selective on information. It makes it easier for people to select only those outlets that are core to their political beliefs. So this has risen fears that this new environment would fragment and would segregate audiences, would fragment and segregate society. So in OpinionNet, we actually investigate these claims. We ask, what are the consequences of this new information environment for society? And in particular, we want to know whether this new environment really fragments and segregates audiences. So we have 3 goals to achieve this. The first goal is we look at the macro structure of the online news domain by looking at 2 different networks, the network of media and the network of audience. And we want to identify whether these networks are fragmented, whether there are structural gaps in these networks. We use the tools of social network analysis to do that. Second, we look at the individuals. We look at how individuals are consuming news online, what type of outlets they are consuming. And we do this by tracking the online navigation behavior of individuals during 3 months. Finally, we want to measure the effects of the online news consumption on opinion. We want to measure particularly whether, after consuming news online, people still share a common set of goals regarding their communities. So what are our findings? First, we find that, and this doesn't look very well, first we find that the network of news providers is quite fragmented, so that news providers, news outlets actually link only to other outlets that belong to their same communication and economic group, and they do not link to outlets that fall out of their economic group. So this is a quite fragmented network. But despite the fragmentation of the network of news providers, the network of audiences is not fragmented at all. So audiences navigate quite widely across news content in the web. Now, the other thing we find is that they tend to follow similar paths, and they tend to converge still on the main big news organizations. Like, they continue to prefer reading El País, El Mundo, ABC, and only occasionally they go to other minor and more extreme outlets. So it's not surprising that we also find that people continue to have common goals and continue to share the same priorities concerning the most important problems of their communities. Now, as for segregation, what do we find? This would be a perfect example of a perfectly segregated society. In this society, left-wing people would only consume left-wing media, and right-wing people would only consume right-wing media. So this is what we find after tracking almost 400 individuals online from a sample of the Spanish online population. We find that there's a lot of overlapping, which means that there is a lot of cross-ideological exposure here. In particular, we find that left-wing people tend to consume information from both sides of the political spectrum quite equally, whereas right-wing people tend to consume a little bit more of right-wing media, but still there's a lot of cross-ideological exposure too in this ideological group. So to conclude, despite fears that this new information environment would fragment and would segregate societies, we find no evidence whatsoever that this is happening, okay? Audiences navigate quite widely news content in the web, and they take advantage of this more diverse environment to consume information from both sides of the political debate. Now, yet our study does not take into account social media. And I think this area deserves future attention. First, because this is an increasingly popular platform of for news consumption. Actually, today, it is 20% of news traffic is attributed to social media. Second, because we know very little about how news are being consumed and are being shared in social media. And finally, because we believe that people are most vulnerable in an unmediated setting, such as social media, to, for example, fake news and to the biases of other people. Think, for example, of, sorry, I have to, think, for example, of how much powerful an early morning tweet from Trump can be to consolidate his or her followers' view of the world as compared to a piece of mediated information, even if it comes from a pro-Trump news outlet. So, to fully understand the effects of this new information environment, we really need to get into what is going on in social media and how social media, this form of unmediated communication, is shaping opinions. Thank you for your attention.